Hey there, aspiring guitarist. Today we're going to talk about hands and the guitar. You often hear somebody say that this neck profile might be better suited for someone with smaller hands. Well, immediately you might conjure up in your mind that they're talking about a child. But even adults have smaller hands, larger hands, but in comparison to what? Well, I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard the term acromegaly or people with enlarged foreheads, and I don't know the exact medical term, but there are some people that have hands that are burly looking. It's certainly not mine. Um, but there are people that you can see, man, they got some hands and they got some thick fingers and thumbs, and some are small. The people with big bear claws are if you happen to see their hand, it's often noticeable. So how does that fit us with a guitar, especially when we hear things like, this nut width on the guitar? What's a nut width? Y'all know the nut is up here, white, could be another color, where the strings cross over from the headstock and the tuners to the neck. So, when you hear somebody say, well, this scale length, which, remember, the scale is from the saddle, the white part down here on the bridge, up to the nut. So the distance between the frets and the distance across the string matters to how big your hands are. Now, I'm not going to say it prevents you from doing something. It may require a different technique. It may require more practice. It may require any number of things. If you've been on my channel a while, you know I have a Dupuytren contracture. And when I first got diagnosed, the doctor made me put my hand flat on a table. You can see I can do that now. We're going to act like that's the table. But when I first did it, my hand was like that. This cartilage right here was so bad that I couldn't even flatten my hand out. So when I finally got to where um, I had laid off gluten, that's what my doctor and I worked out. I am not your doctor. Look that up on your own. I'm just telling you what happened to me. When I got to where it wasn't like this and I had it about like that, I started trying to play the guitar again after not being able to for 5 years. And I started off with a Fender Mustang with a real skinny neck because it was the only way I could make a C chord anymore. I mean, and then as I got better and better and better and better and stretched it more and more and more, I realized I didn't like that skinny neck anymore. But it was part of me buying different guitars. I had taken something I had loved all my life and I'd lost the ability to play, and it came back. So back to what I was talking about. Small fingers, small hands, large hands. Let's go back to what I first said. You might know to apply that automatically to a child, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old. But as we become adults, our hands they become what they are. That could be influenced from your genetics to, are you a mechanic that is constantly stretching your hands? Are you a piano player, a guitarist? It could be any number of things. I am not the professor of guitar hand technology 101. I'm not. When I decided to do this topic, I kept seeing when I would compare guitars and say, notable difference between this model and that model, it almost always came up something about whether or not we had small hands or not. And that this guitar is more suitable for someone with smaller hands, finger style. This other guitar, not even talking about hands, had something to do with. It was more for rhythm strumming, projection, on and on and on and on and on. We're guitarists. We talk about guitars. We find the nuances. We like a dreadnought better than we like an orchestra model, or vice versa. Or we like small guitars, or compact O-size guitars, on and on and on. So how do you know if you've got large hands or small hands? And how important is that? Well, even back when there was no internet and you learned guitar from a Mel Bay book or something like that, the way you learned something was by hanging around other guitarists. And that came in many ways, from being in a garage band to going to a music store. So I told y'all my mother got me my first guitar. I was about 10 years old. It was a Kingston, and I'm not knocking Kingstons. We bought it from a Western auto store. And it sounded good, but the action, which I didn't even know what the action is. The action is the distance from the string down to the fretboard. My guitar had some seriously high action. To make a chord, you had to push. So I saved up money, cutting grass for 3 summers, and I finally went to Simmons Music in Birmingham, Alabama, on the west end side of town where I grew up. And I was going to get me an Epiphone. I had saved the money. Well, he set me down with 2 or 3 different guitars. And he would make me, what he did was, he made me, I already knew how to make a couple of chords because I had that Kingston. But he made me put my finger in the first fret, the first finger. And then he made me stretch all the way to the 5th fret. And I want to say, I don't even think I could reach it back then. But the first guitar he put in my hand when I did that, he went, no, let's get another one. So there was a measurement going on. Well, what I found out from talking to people, if you do a AI Google search, as far as guitarists, what is considered small hands? And I had heard this before. I even saw it in some book. So what they say is you extend your hand, your fretting hand, as far as you can. You see how I'm moving? Instead of this, they're extended. I'm here to tell you, it took me a long time to do this after I got back to playing guitar and got this Dupuytren contracture under control. But what they would generally tell you is if you could stretch it out and you could measure from the extended thumb all the way to the extended pinky, and I'm going to turn this around even though I'm sorry, this is a backward thing if I had somebody else doing it, but so let's stretch this out and then let's come as far as I can, and you can see I'm at about 8.5 inches. And what they say is that's normal. That if you're less than 8.5 inches from the tip of your thumb over to the extended pinky, then you're considered to have small hands. Now, let's stop right there. In a world where everybody thinks bigger is better, I'm going to stop right there, which isn't always true. Many times it's not true. Sometimes it is. I said I was going to stop there, and I went even further, and I wanted to go. There are many great guitarists that have a span less than that I've watched them stretch across 5 frets. I did a search on that, and it said Paul Simon, Nancy Wilson, Prince, Angus Young, Django Reinhardt was missing fingers. I mean, you can overcome those type of things. But If you've got less than 8.5, when you stretch it way out, then you might want to pay attention when they say this guitar scale is more aching to someone, may help someone with smaller hands. Everything from, I've heard that said about a GS Mini, a travel guitar, a Baby Taylor, something with a smaller scale, smaller string spacing. And that's why a lot of us that are into guitars, we do pay attention to nut sizes. If you've got big old giant burly hands, you might want something 1.75 inches to getting on up there to 1.8 inch, 1.9, all the way up to a 2-inch classical nut, the width. Because it gives you room to get them fingers in there if you've got those really chubby fingers, or if that stretch is, not. Think about this though. Even though you may have a stretch bigger than 8.5 from the pinky to the thumb, what if you've got chunky fingers? And this is not a judgment thing. I don't. My hand is what it is, and my hand had to get to where it could extend again with practice. Because I told you, I've still got a trigger on this Dupuytren contracture. If I don't practice before I start playing with others, I've got a trigger finger here that it'll lock up. Now, as soon as I start moving it and playing it and, do a few scale exercises, that's another reason I do scales, to keep this stretched out, then, that trigger finger part goes away and I'm okay. But then I can make a C chord. I couldn't even make it before. I mean, the movements of your hand are going to change on a guitar fretboard depending on where you can place your fingers. And there's all kind of things that can stand in your way. So we always hear this, someone with small hands, someone with large hands. But there's a lot more. Even this 8.5 inch measurement, if you're less than 8.5, you got small. Like I said, that's not everything. Some people measure what they call your fretboard reach, and they take a soft tape measure, like you measure your waist, and you stretch out this L right here from the thumb to the first or second finger, and you measure that curve and everything to see what your fretboard reach is. And what does that mean? That just means your ability to wrap around the guitar neck. Especially you start moving into electric guitars, you're going to find slim necks, chunky necks, all kind of things. So I just wanted to have a little guitar talk and talk about what's a small hand, what's a large hand. It could be in the eye of the beholder. You could have an unusual, wonderful dexterity in your fingers where you overcome that. I know that some people that, if I can't stretch out a bar chord, then I'll do different things. I may turn, they tell you never to do that, but some people may have to do that to be able to get a stretch. I tell people to always try to get that pinky in there. That's hard to do. You may actually have to move that thumb, and I know, don't do it. Well, what if you can? What if you have a deformity like I do? So there are things that guitarists, I talked about Django and playing with, didn't have all the fingers. Well, he learned how to move and stretch and move fast. If I do a C major scale, ideally, I'd love to put that pinky out there and not have to move. But what if I'm on a guitar that has a longer scale and I can't do that? I'm actually going to have to lift up, move down, lift up, move down, lift up, move down. There are all kinds of ways to overcome getting to a fret, getting to a note. That's why I'm going to go back. I say this all the time. And I give plenty of praise to some of the online resources. Like you can go to Sweetwater. It's going to give you the dimensions, the nut size, the radius, type of neck, scale length, strength. You can go to Martin and get the string spacing. You know, the distance in between one string to the next to the next. You know, it'll tell you the measurement going from the first string to the second, to the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. There are all these, you know, math is such a wonderful thing. Many people are scared of math. You got to find out that scales are math. I know. Go ahead, argue with me and this, that, and other. But you're going to see scales, guitar scales. They're a pattern. They're a pattern. They're a pattern of steps, of movements from one fret to the next. Whether you're going horizontally across the neck, measurements go vertically up and down from the top string to the bottom of the string. Math helps you to get in the ballpark of what you want. I hate to go try on clothes. I hate to. But if I know my waist size, if I'm willing to admit it, it doesn't mean that the pant's going to fit perfect when I try it on. But I'm at least in the ballpark. Remember when we used to walk down the rows and rows of pants and they had the little round thing on the hanger, 32, 34, 36. Well, I mean, I know not to get. I hadn't seen a 32 in the waist. I don't even know when. Maybe 8th grade, maybe, who knows. But that's my point. I at least know the ballpark I'm in. Same with when I used to tell people, if you're going to take your child to go get a guitar, you automatically think you're going to buy a big dreadnought, and the kid can't even hold it. It's just too big. So measurements, hand size, 8.5 inches, these are just things that help us get in ballparks. So, and I hope that helps you. It's just general knowledge. Like I said, I'm not any kind of an expert on hand size. I'm just sharing with you all the way back to when I was in Simmons Music, and he made me stretch from the first fret as far as I could go. And he went, nah, it was a little too big. So, hey, I hope this helps you, you know, in the future, maybe with a grandchild, your own child, maybe as a retired person that is like, you know, something just don't feel right. It's not even aware of how nut width and spacing and things like that can change. You can pick up I remember when I went from that Kingston, the first one I got, to the Epiphone. I want to say it was an FT 120. I don't even remember, because I soon traded it for an Ovation Celebrity. But I'll never forget when I went from that Kingston again. I'm not knocking the Kingston. It taught many people to love guitar, because it was at a Western Auto store, which a lot of people visited. But I'll never forget the first time I made a C chord on a good guitar. I was like, oh, wow, that's so easy. Okay, enough of the guitar talk. I always do these hoping you're going to have a blessed guitar journey. And I always say, I really mean it. Happy picking.